Hello, and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and at the start of the week we noticed that new Governor Bruce Rauner was working with some Democrats on occasion, had them literally standing behind him when he was signing a couple of his first few executive orders. Now at the end of the week we're seeing the primary version of Bruce Rauner, who is talking very critically against unions, and unions, a traditional Democratic ally, are lashing back, as we've heard this week.
Right, and this is an interesting development because you're right, and Madeline, as you wrote in the Chicago Sun-Times this week and in a post on our website, it really was looking like we've got a new era going on here of crossing the aisle in cooperation, and we had a couple of press conferences with Governor Rauner, with Democrats Jack Franks and Scott Drury behind him on some ethics measures. Then all of a sudden Governor Rauner went to Richland Community College in Decatur to give, he's kind of billing this as a preview tour for his State of the State address, which is next week. This started last week. He spoke to a class at the University of Chicago Business School. So he was in Decatur on Tuesday, and then in Champaign on Thursday, and was strikingly anti-union in a lot of his in his message, talking about wanting to establish right-to-work zones, allowing municipalities or counties, or I don't know how it will be defined, to declare themselves right to work and get...
So what does that mean exactly?
Means that Illinois is not a right to work state, so if you work in a union shop, if you're in the teachers, if you work for a school district or public school in Illinois, your membership to the teachers union is compulsory and your dues come out of your paycheck. In a right to work state, it's voluntary whether you want to. If you're working in a union shop,
you could be a teacher but not a public school teacher and not be a member of the union.
Right. And the unions have always argued that, listen, if you're going to enjoy the benefits of union representation, which is the higher, the salary, and that you should pay along with everybody else. So this is a big, very emotional issue.
Sure.
And during the primary election, during the Republican primary, when Bruce Rauner had to win over the most conservative faction of the Republicans throughout the state, he was very, very pointed in his criticism of public employee unions. He talked about them being corrupt, and
this dates back to, you've pointed out previously, this dates back to when before he even declared he was running for governor. He was writing guest views in the Chicago Tribune, and
he was appearing on Chicago Tonight, on WTTW in 2012, basically as a representative of Rahm Emanuel's education group, talking about problems with the union having too much control. And he's always been very outspoken about it. He was that way through the primary, but then abruptly after he won on March 18th, you didn't hear the term union boss anymore throughout the general election. So this has been interesting this week that it's being brought back up again.
And since his victory, he went from shaking up Springfield, he still talks about that a little bit, to Illinois is back and we're going to be all about compassion and competitiveness, which, compassion and competitiveness you'd think would include working with unions, or at least trying to get along with unions.
Well, and it still might, because this is all the prelude. We have the State of the State address coming up next week, but then not long after that you have the budget address, and that's where it gets really serious. He's got to make big cuts. He's already talked about Medicaid is going to be a prime target for cuts. Another area where he'll probably at least want to have the threat of making big cuts is when he gets into negotiating with AFSCME, the state's biggest employee union.
Which is also something he's got to do this year. The contract is up for renewal. So
it could be that a lot of the reintroduction of the anti-public union talk could be a prelude, sending a signal to the people he'll be negotiating with that I'm serious. He's got
to negotiate, so he's got to position himself with some room to meet somebody in the middle somewhere, perhaps.
Right. And this is it's interesting because this is so different than what we've seen for the last, really for the last 12 years. It was always trying to guess what's the governor going to talk about in the State of the State. Well, Bruce Rauner is going all around the state now, telling us what he's going to be talking about.
He really has never stopped campaigning, has he?
No,
and this is really an extension of that.
And the other interesting thing too is that if you have seen any video of these appearances at the Booth School at the University of Chicago, or when he was at Richland College, he's up in front of the classroom. He's got the clicker. He's doing the PowerPoint presentation by himself. Remember Rob Blagojevich was on The Apprentice and didn't know how to turn on a laptop. And I can't imagine Pat Quinn going and talking the way that Bruce Rauner has been talking. It's been,
No.
I mean, it's
Pat
really...
Quinn would be pulling out that battered little leather briefcase and
Right.
notebook and thumbing through and trying to find the right page.
So I think this is a really interesting transition week, and I think next week at the State of the State is going to be interesting as well.
All right, well, we will certainly tune into that. We thank you for tuning in with us, and we'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.